Hi, and welcome back. Just wanted to do a video on the jet streams, but before I do, I wanted to give a shout out to those people that support the channel regularly, and those few that have supported it over the last week. It's always the way. It is always the few that do the work of the many. We have 52,000 on average views per month, and probably 2 to 3 people per video, make a small contribution to the ongoing research, both on YouTube as well as on the website, which I always nowadays link in the description. 200,000 people, soldiers should I say, can defend a nation of 300 million, so it is always the work of the few. Nevertheless, guys, I wanted to talk about the jet streams on the planet Earth right now, and just put that in context with the magnetic anomalies that are taking place on the Earth. Most of you know that over the last 100 years the magnetic poles have begun reversing, and it's taken 780,000 years for them to do this again on this Earth. We're not sure whether this is going to be a full reversal or a temporary displacement of the pole. Nevertheless, over the last 100 years we've been tracking the magnetic north pole migrate across the northern hemisphere in almost a single vector till recent years. The last 2 years it's done so in almost a perfect straight line, or a single vector heading towards Siberia. Now, the Earth is quite a large body out in this solar system, 24,000 miles in circumference around its equator, and what you have to do is take into consideration the inertia in these anomalies. They're going to be slow, but nevertheless we are going to see noticeable changes, and I want to point some of those out with regards to the anomalies that are taking place, and the jet streams and the positions that there are. We know that just over the northern hemisphere, to start with, we know that there should be a polar jet stream around 30 degrees. Now, sometimes the video is out of sync with the actual video, so I'm just going to point roughly where that is, 30 degrees around this region. That is where your polar jet stream should be, and around 60 degrees should be where your subtropical jet stream is. And if you just look, the two are almost indecisible. Usually you do get these yondering jet streams hover around those regions, and they're noticeable. They no longer are. They're mixing. It's quite clear to see that we are getting subtropical and polar jet streams mix, and this is probably one of the causes of the flash floods. When you mix subtropical weather with polar weather, you can expect more thunderstorms. We've been experiencing quite a few of those in the UK around 52 degrees latitude. So as you can see, we've got a fragmented jet stream over the northern hemisphere, but it's not as dramatic as what's taking place over the southern hemisphere. If we just pull that up, you'll see. And as you can see, it is looking pretty chaotic down there. Again, the jet streams are not in the regions of where they're supposed to be, and this is big changes on a planetary scale. It surprises me how this isn't the main subject in the mainstream news, because this has massive implications for people all over this world. These jet streams deliver weather systems, and we're noticing, even though there is big inertias at play here, we are noticing dramatic changes in periods of 10 years, in periods of even 20 years. We even go back 30 years. The climate from 30 years ago has drastically changed from a warmer climate to a more wetter, cooler climate, regardless of those people, that are saying that we are in a phase of global warming. What does surprise me is that some of these government agencies now are targeting alternative sources of information, such as this channel, and trying to silence them. The cat is out of the bag, if you ask me. We've shown the graphs that show CO2 still rising whilst temperature decreasing, and we've also showed sunspots with relationships to cooler climates such as the Maunder minimum and the Dalton minimum. And with sunspots dropping off pretty rapidly over the last 30 years, it should come as no surprise to anybody that we are going to be entering a cooler climate. But adding to this the magnetic anomaly and the pole reversal that is in place, only adds to the entropy of these problems that we are soon going to face on this earth. The weather, as I've said before, is critical for crop production, and this is one of the first regions that we are going to start seeing problems with. We've already seen it in the Far East, we've seen it on those South Islands of China, and we're going to see it become more of a problem all over the world as the weather changes, the climate changes and becomes more sporadic. It's going to become more difficult for farmers and food producers to deliver the quantities that they have been accustomed to doing so, even if they are using Monsanto genetically modified crops to suit climates. The problem is with these crops is they're modified for a particular climate. It could be a more wetter climate, or it could be a more dry climate, but the thing is, you're not going to get like the natural crops that we've got and the natural seeds, something that can thrive in a changing environment. Remember, the natural seeds on this planet have evolved and earned their position over millions and millions of years, and they are hardy to all weather systems that can be thrown at them within reason. I've talked about it before, eastern farmers purchasing these seeds from companies such as Monsanto in the hope that they will produce bigger yields because the climate has changed and the climate has fluctuated during the growth of those crops. The farmers have lost the crops in some aspects, and after a few years of this, it has put farmers out of business, and it is even through remortgaging of the farms ended up, farmers that have owned these lands for many generations, passed through their families, have lost their entire inheritance, and it has led to the suicide. The statistics are out there and they are alarming, and this is happening, and it is shocking that this is not being recorded in the mainstream media as it should be, in my view. There are more stranger anomalies to come. We have seen, I've showed in earlier videos, islands pushing themselves up out of the sea floor, brand new, islands, and we have seen also some islands disappear beneath the waves. It brings back those stories of Atlantis sinking in one day. I think it was recorded by Plato, but these are times which we should be concerned about. In my view, they really are, because I think anything could possibly happen during a magnetic reversal. We've done some experiments that show when the poles migrate to a certain degree, they go into the weaker field lines. Things happen much faster in the weaker field lines than they do in the stronger field lines. So we are rapidly approaching that 40 degrees, and we have already in the last 2 years seen the vector of the magnetic North Pole that was tracked over the northern hemisphere change from an easterly direction to a southeasterly direction in just the last 2 years. You know, it's very sobering when you think about that. You know, the government's probably in the belief that they can provide for the 7 billion inhabitants on this planet, and I seriously doubt that. I seriously doubt that because of the amount of effort that has gone into building these underground bases. These are immense cities in some aspects that have been built underground, and you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of these? You know, why go to the levels of expenditure to that degree for no reason at all? It isn't just the Western countries. This is something that has been practiced worldwide. Who is it that gets to go in these facilities at the time when they're needed as well? That's another question. You know, these are all the things that are not being, you know, relayed to the people in general. And I've said before, you know, perhaps as some other organisations and directors of those organisations such as NASA and NOAA have came out and said, you know, that we should probably consider putting up a few provisions for ourselves. I think it's very wise information. And, you know, even though they have not suggested the full details of what we could possibly be facing, other than, you know, it could affect the national grids of countries, the electricity production, you know, because of the expectancy of solar flares. You know, we're expecting a lot of these things. We're expecting a one-off or a 1 in 100 year flood in the UK, for instance. That's why the Thames barriers was erected. We're expecting, you know, at this period of time, solar flares to become increased, and they pose a danger of frying out electricity cables and power stations and substations. Those are the things that they've told us about. But I have suspicions that there is something more going on beneath our feet, and more in particular in the interior of this earth. And that is probably been quietly and very subtly mentioned by other well-known scientists. For instance, Larry Newt, who used to fly out in a twin-engine Otter plane and land over the North Pole and take ground readings of where the magnetic North Pole was. That was until the twin-engine Otter planes were no longer able to do that, because the range was slowly getting further and further. And, you know, these are special aircraft that can land on short runways and take off on short runways, and that's why they was well suited for landing on, you know, the Arctic region to take these ground readings. But he did mention something was taking place beneath our feet, and, you know, like I say, the experiments that are done show that when we heat up magnetic bearing material, it weakens. And I suspect with the increase in volcanoes, earthquakes, that we are possibly getting early signs, albeit on a small and slow inertia, signs of the beginning signs, should I say, I'll just spit it out, maybe crustal displacement. You know, we can't outrule it. You know, I think it was even Albert Einstein supported the theory. So, you know, I'll leave you with those thoughts, guys. You know, we can see the jet streams have changed. We can see how this has affected marine life and other creatures that rely on these poles for their navigation. We're seeing, you know, how it's devastating farms. You know, we're seeing the increase in, you know, anomalies such as typhoons, hurricanes, cyclones, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes in frequency and magnitude. All these things have showed an increase in 30 years, as well as a decrease in global temperatures, despite, CO2 still continuing to increase. Shocking times, guys. So, I just wanted to, jump in, give you a little bit more information, and, more than anything else, tell you that this is a real problem, and that we as inhabitants on this planet, will experience these things. And as time goes on, these anomalies are only going to get worse. And this is what is frightening scientists, because there has been no sign of an equilibrium reached in the anomalies that have been getting worse. So bear that in mind. I'll put the link down there, guys, if you want to support the research in the channel. You're more than welcome. And it's appreciated. It's encouraging, to say the least. I'm doing my best here. We're trying to get that equipment developed so that we can track the magnetic North Pole, and we can also track the decaying magnetosphere that protects us from those harmful cosmic rays. And that's what that money gets spent on, guys. So the link's down there. I usually say enjoy your weekend, but we've almost reached the end of the weekend, so I'm going to say, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. And as always, bye for now.